central question of my life has always been, how can I be a Marxist and still own my own jacuzzi? Now, it's not a political statement. No, not at all. In fact, what I mean is, like a lot of us, we all dream of noble purposes. We want to go out and make a difference in our career, but we're worried about, I don't want to starve to death, right? So how do I do that? I mean, I do believe that we're all spiritual beings in material form. But, you know, material form, money doesn't talk, it swears. It's a critical part of our life. So how do you go out and serve others and at the same time financially prosper? How can you sort of be like a Mother Teresa and a Warren Buffett, two people I'll come back to at the end of today's talk? Well, I'd like to tell you that I've got all the answers, but sad to say I don't. I'm a journeyman just like you. In fact, I call myself a conflicted achiever, right? You know, I climb the ladder of success wrong by wrong. You know the old story about climbing that mountain. And when I was in my late 30s, I climbed the mountain. I climbed it right to the top. And I got there. And of course, you've heard this many times before. It was like, are you kidding me? This is it? That's it? You know, where's the fanfare? What I didn't realize yet at that point in my life was that it's really all about climbing the right mountain for you. We call it following not the bright lights, but the right light for you. And it's about doing it with people that you care about and that you respect. It's also about leaving something behind for future climbers as well. Those are the three, what we're going to call lifelines, that I'd like to talk about in more detail today, with the main theme, what I'm trying to get all of us to avoid, that I've been through as a conflicted achiever, is to try to help you be a passionate achiever and avoid confusing achievement with love. Achievement's a good thing, but achievement should be grounded in love, not a vehicle to get love. So I have three lifelines I'd like to offer you. These are guidelines for life to think about how to really be able to do that, how to love yourself, love others, and love humanity, love all living things. How do we do that in our life? It's certainly a challenge for me, and it's one that I basically learned from a group of students around the country, from a group that I was fortunate enough to be the faculty founder of over a quarter century ago when I left Harvard. It's called Net Impact. It's the largest group of students and young professionals in the world who all believe they want to use their business careers to be a force for social and economic justice. And I've been really honored to meet them and learn from them, and these are some of the lessons that I've learned from them today. The three lifelines, let me just give them to you quickly at the beginning. They are, don't get really good at what you don't want to do. That's the bobblehead lifeline. Oh yeah, I've done that one. Oh yeah. Don't get really good at what you don't want to do. Surround yourself with a community of love and plant trees under whose shade you'll never sit. We use those three sort of lifelines to help us. What we say at Net Impact, what we do is we occupy Wall Street from within. So let me get started. Again, I learned the first one the hard way by making mistakes, as you've sort of already heard. Don't get really good at what you don't want to do. I came from a broken home like many people do. I was a bit lost. My parents were actually married for almost 4 years, which is pretty good, I guess, for a liberal Democrat and a right-wing Republican, but whatever. Anyway, I was a bit of a lost boy, and then I found a home. It's called TEDxStMarksSchool, where we are today, celebrating our 150th anniversary. And for 5 years, this was my home, and I flourished. I was an absolute achievement machine. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. There's that word achievement again. And I really flourished here, and I did what I was good at. I was very good at math and economics. And I flourished doing that, and it led me to going to Harvard. I was at Harvard for nearly 20 years. I was a very slow student, but I was at Harvard. I was a student, and I was a professor. And I had a lot of great things happen to me, you know, as Kirk was saying. Some honors, research, teaching, consulting, did well financially, did well sort of on this fame circuit, really got more accolades than I believe I really deserved. One other thing. I was miserable. I was having trouble getting out of bed in the morning and going to work. I thought of my poor mom who used to try to get me to go to religious school when I was a kid. It was almost the same thing. Of course, now I'm very involved in religion, so that's another story. But it just wasn't working for me for whatever reasons, and I couldn't figure out why. So how do you figure it out? How do you find your path? How do you find your way to really live a life of consequence? Well, for me, I don't know about for you, but I had one of those aha moments. Have you ever had one of those aha moments when sort of the clouds separate, open up, and the skies are so blue, and you just look at things differently than you've looked at them before? You shift your consciousness. It's just an amazing thing, and it happened to me. It happened to me when I saw the drawing of my 6-year-old daughter. A simple drawing. Back then, the joke was, what does Daddy do for a living? What does Daddy love to do? Nobody really knew what I did when I left Harvard. And Nicolette, my younger daughter, my older daughter who's here today, Amanda, she graduated in 2006 from St. Mark's. This is my younger daughter at 6 years old. She did this drawing of, what does Daddy love to do? It was a picture of a guy with, sort of a big head, a big mouth, right? Yeah, works here, right? In a stubby little body, right? But she gave me a lot of hair. Bob, we can both relate to this. Gave me a lot of hair. And you give me a lot of hair, you can draw me any way you like, right? And I was next to what she called my pewter. And what she meant by that was it's my computer. And she said, Daddy loves to type. He loves to type. That's what Daddy loves to do. Now, this may seem like a small thing, but for me, it was like, what? And for the next 3 weeks, memories started flooding into my head, things I had long forgotten about my past. In fact, what I started remembering was that when I was about Nicolette's age, actually maybe a year older, I used to have a little hobby of mine, which was writing short stories and selling them door to door. No paper route for me. I used to sell 1-page stories for 3 cents a copy, 2 pages for 5 cents a copy. Everybody bought them. Of course they would, right? Isn't that great? Wonderful. But then came what we call the VOJs. The VOJs are the voices of judgment. It's a psychology term for, peer pressure, what society says you should be doing, and of course, very importantly, particularly when you're young, but all our age, what your parents think you should be doing. So what did my parents say? Now, separately, but they said, oh, Mark, you can't be a writer. Writers don't make any money. They came from that generation of financial security as number one. You can't be a writer. So what else did I do? Well, Nicolette's drawing got me thinking about how I had a Lucy stand. You remember Lucy from Peanuts? A little advice stand? Well, I had one of those to actually give advice to my friends on how to get along better with their siblings, okay? Of course, I had no siblings at the time. 5 cents. Now, that one was a big one. My folks were like, wow, this is great, Mark. You want to become a psychiatrist. Now, a little footnote, I'm Jewish. In the Jewish tradition, when you become a viable fetus when you either become a lawyer or a doctor, right? So I said, no. I want to become a social worker. No, didn't go down too well. No financial security. So sort of remembering this from Nicolette started to bring me on to really think about what is it that I really, really want to do. And that at the time, I had a small consulting company. I had started this group, which we'll talk about in the third Lifeline, Net Impact, as well as now More Than Money Careers. And that I was doing sort of on the side as the faculty founder. And then I had started writing this e-newsletter to go to our chapter presidents at the different schools, which eventually grew into a newsletter that went to 87 countries and several million people. But at that time, these were my side activities, and she got me to focus on maybe this is really where you should be focusing your time and energy. The next step in sort of living a life of consequence, of not confusing achievement with love. The next step is not necessarily following your passion. We talk about that a lot in the business that I'm in. It's really about the number 2 lifeline, surrounding yourself with a community of love. Now, I mentioned before about St. Mark's, which was my home for 5 years. This is an incredible place for me, and as I say, I was an achievement machine. That's where I saw it here. I studied hard. I played sports with all my friends. I was in clubs. I was so busy I couldn't even think about being a troubled teen in any way. I didn't have the time for it. And it was fantastic, just fantastic. The faculty and all my coaches, amazing. I could tell you the names of everyone to this day. I won't bore you with that, but every single one of them, they knew when to push us, when not to push me. They knew when to discipline us and when not to. When we need to be talked to and when we need to be left alone. It was just amazing. And for me, this was all about achievement. What I wasn't seeing was it really was basically achievement grounded in love. There's tremendous love here. And I could tell you lots of stories, but I want to focus on just one. One story about one of my three best friends. Two of my best friends, Bob McClay is here today, best friend for over 50 years. And the other one is Pablo Lancella, who's not here today. I'm sorry, he's out windsurfing off the coast of Baja. So that's for Pablo. True story. Anyway, we played a bunch of sports. In fact, Bob, Pablo, and I played all our sports together. And one sport in particular was wrestling. Our coach was Mr. Wiedegott, Fritz Wiedegott, who was just a phenomenal coach. We all took either soccer, wrestling, lacrosse, some sport with Fritz. Just amazing. Mr. Large, others over the years. But Fritz was really, really special. And for me, the high point of my 5 years was not actually directly about me, which as an egotistical, arrogant, self-centered teenager is sort of an unusual story even for me. It was about Pablo, and it was about a wrestling match. Our junior year, Pablo was an excellent wrestler. And our junior year, he actually lost a match. He had pink eye and chicken pox that year, so it was a tough year for the poor guy. But he lost one match. I still remember the guy's name, Compton Chase. Brown and Nichols, today known as Buckingham Brown and Nichols. This guy was a two-time New England champion. He was a phenomenal wrestler, and he just destroyed Pablo. Well, anyway, that year, at the end of the year-end tournament for all the schools happened to be at St. Mark's, so we all wanted to do well. I got upset in the semifinals. I was very upset about that. I didn't do well. I was down. I wanted to be able to do the nighttime finals and at my school. But of course, Pablo was in the finals, and guess who he was wrestling? Compton Chase, of course. Well, he and Mr. Wiedegott had spent a little bit of time on this particular match. They figured this might happen. And the match was incredible. I still remember the score. Pablo won 12-5. Incredible. What really, really stuck with me, my aha moment there was very simple. It was watching Pablo come off the mat after they'd raised his hand in victory, and he threw himself into Mr. Wiedegott's arms as they hugged, and Pablo's face over Mr. Wiedegott's left shoulder, I was looking right at it, and that face was transcendent. It was beautiful. It wasn't just about what they had achieved together. Pablo also, parenthetically, was named the outstanding wrestler that year in the tournament. But it was about the caring and love. As Pablo says, Mr. Wiedegott won that match even more than I did. How much time they had spent together doing something that was important to both of them, both in terms of what they did in their future growth. So that, for me, is a metaphor of what St. Mark's was for me, a community surrounded with love and respect. And today, over the years that we counsel thousands and tens of thousands every year of students in terms of their careers, when we talk to them after they've left school and are in a job, the ones who are the happiest, growing fast, really enjoying what they're doing, the number one thing they talk about for the last 15 years has been the community of people that they work with, and even sometimes the clients that they work with. That's really the critical part of living a life of consequence, of really living a life where you feel you're making a difference and hopefully financially prospering. That leads me to the third and final, a lifeline: plant trees under whose shade you'll never sit. When I left Harvard Business School and I was pretty lost, I was fortunate enough to run into a young man named Josh Melman, who the year before had co-founded with Wayne Silby, who's the founder of Calvert Funds. He and Wayne had co-founded an organization called Social Venture Network. Social Venture Network was it still is a group of social entrepreneurs who we used to call, in the early days, the donuts. They have a lot of dough, but they're a little bit nuts. Not an uncommon story. They're nuts because they actually believe that business can be used as this force for a more just, sustainable world, as a world of more social and economic justice, a world where good businesses uplift the human spirit and alleviate poverty and suffering on our planet. It was really beautiful to meet these people. But the first day I met Josh in New York, the first thing he says to me is, "Hey, Mr. Harvard Business School professor, Dean, hey, what are we going to do about all those students? What are we going to do about the next generation?" And Josh, even though I wasn't responsible for the more than a few students at my own school, he had given me my mission for the next quarter century plus about helping these young people find their path of service, something I was struggling to do myself. And planting those trees under whose shade, well, we're starting to sit as they've grown up. And in doing that, I'd like to give you two brief lessons that I've learned from these students over the years, and then one example. The first lesson I've learned from them is all about change and making a difference. You don't have to go and end hunger in Ethiopia. It's all about helping one person at a time. In fact, as I mentioned, Mother Teresa used to talk about this when they'd say how many people she had saved. She'd talk about one person at a time. You save one soul, it's as if you save the world. One person at a time is how you make change. And as she said so beautifully, very few of us can do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. The second lesson that I learned from the students over the last quarter century really has to do about when. When do you do this? What do you need? What do you need in your toolkit, your experience, et cetera? And actually, the expression on this comes from Warren Buffett. He was speaking at school one day, and he got asked a question at the end by this young gentleman that went something like this. Mr. Buffett, what I want to do, this is my plan. I'm going to go out and make a lot of money for like 10 or 15 years. And then I'm going to go and do what I really, really want to do and go out there and really make a difference in the world and, blah, 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 blah. What do you think about that? Mr. Buffett said, well, Sonny, I think to me that sounds like you're saving up sex for old age. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? So my metaphor for people like this, and I know it has some numbers in it, is a guy named T.J. McIntyre, who I just recently talked to. T.J. became a Net Impact chapter president at the University of Oregon MBA program back in 1997. And he came to me as a first-year student and said, I want to have a conference on sustainability, to which we all said, what the heck is sustainability back in the 1990s? We didn't even know what it was. He explained it. We helped him a little bit. And that spring, at the University of Oregon, which is in Eugene, Oregon, 2.5 hours from Portland, so not exactly a megalopolis, he had over 2,000 young people show up for a conference on sustainability, many of whom we have followed to this day, and many of whom, like TJ today is the executive vice president of a well-known natural foods company, and of course is managing and leading their sustainability effort. Planting trees under whose shade you'll never sit. So all of this today, all of this from our talk, all that I've talked about really started, I don't know about your aha moment, with a simple drawing by a 6-year-old child. Would you like to see it? Yeah. Do we got it here? Yeah. So whatever it is for you, if it's a drawing, a friend's face, the wonders of what a young person can do, what you think is impossible, I hope you too will find your life a consequence and live your one and only life, maybe as a Marxist, and still own your own jacuzzi. Thanks very much.